Oh, this is going into the minutes, right?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yep. Okay. So we've got a quorum. So without further ado, do we want to call the November meeting of the IT Advisory Committee to order? It's November 29th, and we're here in meeting room 1 at Belmont Town Hall. Thanks everyone for coming down. We got a kind of a full agenda, so let's move on ahead with it. I think the first order of business is just to approve the minutes from our October 9th meeting, which I've stapled to the agenda, and our very competent secretary sent out in advance, so hopefully we've got a chance to look over. But if not, just maybe take a couple minutes and look over it.
Yeah, so there's some typos and just some minor edits on the second page or last page. They're in my copy that Charlie's looking at, so we can just hand that to you.
I need that back.
So first, I didn't know for some of the nominations if we needed seconds or not, right? But the typos on the last page are pretty minor.
I don't know. I don't think I've ever recorded seconds.
Okay.
No one's ever complained before.
All right, then that's fine.
And I certainly don't remember who seconded.
Yeah, that's fine. But yeah, and the minutes here are for the subcommittee, not our main committee. Unless I'm looking at the wrong agenda.
I probably did send.
Oh no, this is the agenda. Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Actually, I'll take this after and fix them up. Okay.
Hey, that.
So. You want to assume that I'll fix the typos and vote on it, or how do you want to handle this?
No, I think we got to really start all from scratch with this.
Yeah, let's just do that.
Yeah. Any other motion to
Approve as amended.
accept as amended?
Yeah.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. Thank you, Dave. Okay.
Any comments from the public? I think our speaker is the only member of the public. So if you don't have any comments, okay. And we are actually webcasting this on Zoom, but I don't see any participants, which is okay. So we don't have any comments from that. So let's move ahead to.
Is it being recorded as well?
It is being recorded as well. Yes. So let's move ahead to the next item of business.
Which is Chris's presentation.
Yeah, which is Chris's presentation. Yeah.
So welcome, Chris. Sorry, we're not a very friendly group here, but this is actually this is Chris Roy, the general manager of the Light Department. So he kindly offered to come and talk to us about, if I'm not mistaken, your vision of broadband in Belmont. So. I think when we had conversed via email, you estimated about a 20-minute presentation with Q&A. So certainly from this group, I think there'd be a lot of interest in what you have to say. And, hopefully we'll have an interactive conversation.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, most importantly. So that's along those lines. My thought was for that 20 minutes at least to lay a lot of information out there, see what folks what they know about municipal provided broadband, things like that. And so I don't have slides, but what I thought might be helpful was basically there was a report done by Harvard University for Concord, where, before I came here, I was in Concord. I guess I should start with that. So I'm coming up on 7 months as the new manager of Belmont Light. So prior to that, I was at Concord Light for almost 10 years. And in that tenure, we launched a broadband service to the home. And so during that time, I was so excited about it. I don't live in Belmont or Concord. I live in Harvard. So I co-founded the Harvard Broadband Committee to bring broadband to my community. And so kind of building on that, kind of spreading the word about what it can do for a community from a multifaceted approach. And there's a distinct advantage for folks that already own their own utilities, so that's terrific. And so basically this report that I'll hand out, which is amazing to me, it's already becoming slightly dated. I guess that's how technology goes. That kind of details Concord's path, but in there it's broadly applicable to all communities, and especially comparing Belmont and Concord in terms of community, infrastructure, utilities. They're very, very comparable. So rather than pull things from the report and put it into a slide, I figured I'll just hand out.
That's great.
Thank you.
And is it okay if we were to post this on the town webpage?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
I pulled that from Concord Lights webpage.
Yep.
And so,
Just a very quick question. I
Absolutely.
assume that approach and moving this is, but I just want to confirm, Concord Light is owned by the town of Concord the same way Belmont
Belmont. Exactly. And so then just for updated report reference, this is the newest September version of Concord Broadband's service offerings and pricing. So then you can also compare it to what you currently subscribe to at home to see how that stacks up. So with that, I guess I will just start with a brief overview. Essentially, fiber and broadband. So typically, what we've seen is fiber, as I'm sure everyone here knows, fiber has been deployed for municipal purposes for a while. But what we found was, in that back when fiber was deployed for those municipal purposes, broadband really wasn't a thing. A fiber broadband wasn't really a thing. So strand counts are low. Fiber's older. Generally speaking, you'll find it's often multi-mode, and we find that single mode tends to be a little more useful. So it's dated, and there's not enough existing infrastructure to really be meaningful for any additional expansion. And so in terms of our purpose and what other municipally owned utilities, for reference, there's 41 of the 351 towns in Massachusetts. There's 41 that own their electric utilities, and that's a distinct advantage on many levels. Including on the electric side, obviously, but this is a natural offshoot. The parallels between broadband service and electric service are very comparable. So basically, what this is doing is building on the technology needs of the electric utility. What they found was in the Concord application, it stemmed from deploying a smart grid system. And so as more and more information is needed from the utility to provide programming content, demand response, participating in revenue markets and things like that, it's just data. Lots of data being exchanged. And so that's a natural handshake to data being exchanged for web, internet, home offices, and things like that. So what happened was, in Concord's case, and in some ways Belmont's case, fiber was deployed as part of a smart grid effort with the known ability to expand. Now in our case here in Belmont, we have a smart grid that didn't require or didn't really need running fiber to every corner of the community. But every city and town is unique. Our advantage is that we have this Project C on the electric side. If you're familiar with some of the electric ops capital plans that we have, Project C is a voltage upgrade for the whole town, which means we will be touching every corner of the town to upgrade the voltage. So that's a natural opportunity to say, hey, we're going to be in every pole, on every manhole, pulling in wire. Why not pull fiber in with it? And so with all that, kind of in the background, we have Project C going, we have smart grid needs, we have demand response, we have progressive utility initiatives on the docket. What else can we do with all this? And so that's where broadband comes in. And so from a broadband perspective, you know, a lot of folks ask that, you know, what does that do for us? Why is that good? Why do we care? You know, why is that something we want? And so that there's a lengthy list, and you know, you can find it in there. And building on the municipal, so this I could get going on this for a while. But, building on the business model of a municipal utility. So the telling tale, you know, some of this I apologize is somewhat fragmented, but the telling tale. So for Concord Broadband and its deployment, not one shred of marketing was done. And because what was already in place, why that was so successful was that the reputation of the municipal utility and how it serves the community and the intent of the local utility to be there for the community is applicable to all the services they offer. And so what you get from starting from a local community standpoint, when you offer broadband, it's locally governed, locally owned. It is owned by the community that it serves. And so with that inherent business model is the fact that it's going to meet your needs. It's not, you're not answering to a set of shareholders somewhere spread around the world. You know, there's a place for that. But you see that here, you know, the service is for the community. And so what does that mean? A big one, you see net neutrality, right? So that was a big point where you see, you know, these big conglomerates saying, well, you know, it's another way to make money or throttle speeds. And so we, you know, in Concord, they immediately got and said, we're net neutral. You know, we're here for you. And policies that govern us are set by the community. And so that was a big one. It's a nonprofit. So as you can look for the finances, there's the Berkman Center of Internet and Society has done other reports that compares municipal broadband to Comcast, Charter, Time Warner. And, you know, I think it's out of they did a couple pages worth. And
there's Verizon Files.
Verizon Files, I believe, is on there. They did it. It's around the country, so it depends on who's in the area. Excuse me. But well, what you find, same as the electric side, right? So we're surrounded, Belmont Light's surrounded by Eversource. And so I mentioned there's 41 MLPs. That is, Lexington's been trying to buy out their grid from Eversource for almost 2 decades. And they've met heavy resistance to lobbyists, obviously. And so what they did in turn is post the rates. And so you'll see in most cases, unfortunately Belmont's not quite in this category, but we're working on it. Most cases, municipal light rates are 20% lower than the investor-owned rates. And so kind of that same type of theme also holds true for this. So you're getting you know, a broadband service that's governed by local policy. You're getting rates that are generally more favorable than the larger companies. I should mention, like in Concord, again, because demand was so high, we intentionally priced it higher to kind of mitigate, you know, having a 2-year waiting period and aggravating people right out of the gate. So, you know, we managed demand through the pricing model. So that was one mechanism. So that, you know, throws off that comparison a little bit. But generally speaking, you can get the lower rates. And the big one, which is the harder sell because it's how people feel about things, but the customer service is above and beyond what you'd ever get from Comcast. You see all the bad PR when you do an install. You know, we tell you we'll be there at 9, you're there at 8:58. There's no 8-hour windows, and we don't show up, and you have to take 5 days off of work to get, you know, a new piece of equipment. You know, just things like that. That spreads through the community, through word of mouth like that, and you're off and running. But So I'm kind of working backwards from the community side back. And so that's the broadband side to provide that service to homes and businesses. You'll see service level agreements are in there for the business side. I imagine, there's a number of folks that live in this community that work from home, that will log in remotely, that have home offices. Those are the folks that immediately, as soon as it was posted on the website, they clicked, we want this. And so that was a big selling point. But now, moving back, so back to the utility side, so it's really a win-win. So the fiber side for broadband, so what we found is as you move into more progressive energy programming to get into people's homes, what we do is you start to rely on the data collection, and how does that data collection get back to the utility? In many cases, that data collection is happening using a customer or a residence in-home Wi-Fi. And politely speaking, many folks are not familiar with how to set up their in-home Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And so, so an extension of this is looking at utilizing broadband as a means to also more reliably connect with the end users' data, and then participate in utility programming. So there's a benefit to the end users of broadband. That reminds me to mention when the business model for Concord was being compiled, it was our determination that broadband of the future was not phone and TV services. It's all going to be over the air. So we said we don't want to it's a big loser. Braintree, Norwood, Shrewsbury offer traditional cable, and they all have said it's a huge money loser. Again, back to the business models. The networks are these large conglomerates that have no interest in local communities, and so they all these games and contracts drive up prices, and so they said whatever you do, don't do TV. And same thing on the phone. Landlines are going away. 5G is becoming more popular. So in summary, we said broadband is data only that you can get for the most part, aside from sports. We're getting really close to. I myself am a cord cutter. So you're getting really close to being able to get all of your TV through data. 5G is requiring a backhaul. So even if, one of the big threats folks would ask about is, well, what about cell service? And you have to transmit that data eventually somehow. And so what we found too, when we deployed the fiber, there was immediate return on existing businesses that wanted to have data communication between sites or data communication to cell towers. So there's dark fiber leasing revenue opportunities. So that's on the utility side. So there's a lot of different aspects that really make the investment and the payback happen quickly. And then you throw in all the customer service side and the business model of having a locally owned and regulated utility. All of that comes with it.
Okay. Can I ask you a question? What equipment are we actually talking about? This fiber all the way to the house, a fiber presumably modem or some switching device at the house, and then RJ45 throughout, or what?
Perfect. Yeah. So that's where I was going to go next, which is great.
Okay.
So how do you do all that? That all sounds great, but is it impossible to do? What type of undertaking is this? That's, to this day, still stuns me, and actually how doable it is. And so, if you probably already or perhaps more familiar than I am, but they have active optical networks and they have the passive optical networks. And so those are really two options to initiate broadband equipment. And so in Concord, there are others that have been active. I tend to truly think that the GPON, the passive optical network, is the better product. And so for a G, and it's the one I'm most familiar with, so I'll speak to that. But for a GPON network, basically what that entails is, so in Concord's application, what we did was we ran through that deployment, fiber is relatively, especially compared to copper wire, relatively inexpensive. And so we ran high strand counts throughout town. And so in terms of how that's actually done, we ran a feed. So there's these bulk providers. Verizon's one of them, but Light Tower, BSCI, which is now Crown Castle, Earthlink was a bidder. And so what happened was we ran, so they have their own networks throughout. And so in this application, speaking of this application in Concord, we ran a redundant feeder to the Lexington line, we ran one to Acton, we ran one to Lincoln. So we had 3 bulk provider access points, and they were split between Light Tower and DSCI or Crown Castle, and then I believe Earthlink is now one. So you had triple redundancy for access points to the community, triple redundancy in terms of providers. And so those connection points were just usually pairs. You know, we didn't have to splice in 288 strands, just a couple of pairs that met on a pole. And so what the neat part was, and some of this is population based because there are limitations, but in that same application, right when I was making the transition here, we were starting the process to run fiber to Lincoln to serve Lincoln schools and the Lincoln Municipal buildings in Carlisle. And so a community like Carlisle, more rural, or even Lincoln, you can serve the entire community with a box on an 8x8 pad. And you run the racks in there. So basically these links that come from the town borders go into this 8x8, cabinet. And you have your Light Tower, I just told the link, but the Light Tower modem, the handoff point, and they were, each one was a gig. So they had the handoff point there that goes to your E7s. Also, the technology implemented here was Calyx, which I thought was it's pretty nice. And so then you get the Calyx E7, so then that's like your sub transmission, and it goes out to a variety of cabinets that are on the poles throughout the town. In Concord's application, there's 35 cabinets, and from each cabinet you serve each house. So really what you're talking about in terms of, in summary, for infrastructure, you're talking just the fiber on the poles, an 8x8 cabinet, usually 2 for redundancy, and a couple dozen pole-mounted cabinets. So it's really not.
And in a community like Belmont, where you might have a lot of people who already have FiOS or some fiber optic package, how does the cutover work? If they were to say, I'm going to ditch FiOS and go with Belmont or broadband.
Sure. So the cutover, so we find that, and again, drawing in the parallels a little bit to kind of highlight the applicability. Concord's about 50% underground, Belmont's about 50% underground. So overhead is straightforward. You just run the new line and cut over. Like, you could run both. Some folks did that because they wanted to keep TV. The challenge is in the underground, where people don't have enough pipe. And so there's a variety of solutions we implemented. Some folks installed a new pipe and ran redundant feed. Other folks said, we don't want to have anything to do with Verizon. Typically the pipe's on private property or privately owned. So they said, okay, and they, again, back to the local service level, they said, look, today, if we cut service with Verizon, can you be there, run it in, we'll pull out the old one, pull in the new one and run it for you? Sure, no problem. It's really easy to coordinate. It's not like this quagmire of a call center you get from these other groups. Which reminds me, no offense to folks that might work for some of these. I didn't check people's backgrounds. But I found that this happened to me before. But
I think you're safe.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone works for Verizon.
All right, that's good.
A lot of us buy from them.
Sure. But anyway, so that's where that local, it's hard to express the value that brings, but that local ability to coordinate a cutover like that, where I'm down with Verizon, pull it call it in, you basically go a few hours without service. Almost that simple. And
On a related question, what was the percentage of homes that actually switched? So obviously part of the business
Yes.
model, right, is you've got people on Comcast, you've got people on Verizon. We have 2 providers here, whereas Concord only had 1.
Yep.
That doesn't necessarily mean there's more competition, but
Great
it
question.
means there's more choices.
Yep.
And so do you have a model or based on Concord or other towns as to what that expected number of conversions is, given it's local and the price might be lower, et cetera, et cetera?
30%. So
30%.
the Concord business model was a 30% uptake, and anything above that's gravy. And so the returns and the paybacks were based on a third of folks making the swap.
So how are things going?
How did it play out?
So, well, as we speak, good. Actually, 30% seems to be the number. It just perhaps, again, the way things work in the world, it was always the hardest people to connect to the first adopters. Like, I'm looking at the houses that are 10 feet from the pole. I'm like, why are you not calling for service? And the folks that are, 6 miles in the woods, I want service. And so, so I expect that as time moves on, things will.
How long has this conversion offering been underway? I mean, has it been a year? Has it been 8 months?
Yes. So the fiber deployment for smart grid started in 2012. That's been a couple of years, but the actual Concord broadband offering started in that was 2015. Yes, 2015.
And you've been here in Belmont about 8 months.
Yes.
So you've got about 2.5 years worth of experience in Concord with this conversion process.
So I took also part of that. So going back, I could get into staffing and all that. I didn't know detail.
I think
Yes.
what you convinced me is that you have experience with the implementation of this. I'm not sure that Concord is a comparable community because it's larger, but I think population-wise it's a lot smaller. But nevertheless, you've had that experience, and you're not, as we say, a newbie to this idea.
And it's actually a good thing in a way because there, in many cases, there's minimum 2-acre zoning, so you're running all this infrastructure for a few homes.
Yeah.
Here, you want a piece of fiber, and you can get a dozen homes. And so,
2 acres, you can get more than
you know what I mean? So in many ways, it makes the business a little more attractive.
So your report says that the network helped the town avoid $108,000 in
Yes.
annual communications costs in addition to the $88,000 in leasing revenue. That's like the dark fiber leasing. What were the communications costs that were offloaded?
So, okay, so that's a good point. So through the broadband offering, there are 2 things. And with that came a telecommunications coordinator and a network technician. When we launched this, it was 2 people. And so what we found through that process, so the 88 is the dark fiber leasing, but the other one is the bulk internet. And so like that was one of the big things for my town, was I'm looking at these figures that the schools were paying for Verizon service and things like that. And I said, this is outrageous. By being able to connect our fiber to a light tower and then bid out pricing for the bulk service, little to no markup. We start to see these competitive pricing figures come in. Now, I haven't, certainly this is preliminary discussion. I haven't done any of those figures for here, but that's those opportunities.
It's worth looking into.
Exactly.
Are the bulk providers guaranteed to be net neutral, or is that kind of just an assumption at this point?
So that was exactly answered earlier this year. And so the question, that is built into the contract with them. And so when we negotiate contracts with them, we say you must be net neutral.
Awesome.
And the advantages in terms of like some of the other benefits are around like peak pricing and things that you can do with sort of the electric demand half of it. But my understanding is can we already do that in Belmont?
Yes.
Minus fiber network. So these two things are all linked. Or are there capabilities that we could realize beyond what we can do now with this fiber?
So this is looking forward. So today we can. But this is where it all links together. And so we have the Belmont's climate action plan. As part of that climate action plan, there's a twofold approach to making our power supply portfolio more renewable. But also part of that process is also beefing up our efficiency programming, conservation programming. But as part of that is electrification. And so this is the big challenge is, well, typically the mindset, generally speaking, is electricity is bad. It's expensive, it's probably fueled by coal, it's terrible, stay away from it. But what we're trying to do now, as the utility sector, well, municipal utility sector, the IOUs throw them out there. But on the municipal side, we're trying to say, look, if we want to meet climate goals as a society, the only way to do that is convert people to electricity. Because as soon as you buy a gas furnace, oil furnace, as soon as you buy a gas engine, you're emitting. You're fueling it with fossil fuels, it's burning it, it's combusting, it's burning it, and emitting. The only, but if you go to electricity, you have more options. You can go to solar, wind, hydro, you name it. And so we're trying to say, look, electricity is not the bad guy anymore. It's our platform for progress in the future. But there's a cost. People, there is. Electricity is expensive, especially in the Northeast. And so that's where these demand response programs become more and more important. And so in order to encourage electrification and then and encourage folks and empower folks to take control of their energy consumption, that's where we need to reach into people's homes, give them insight into how they're using energy, and give them the ability as we switch rates to, because there's time of use rates. I don't know how familiar you are with rate design. The time of use rates, there's different economic mechanisms to encourage behavior. And so if we're going to try and encourage behavior through rates, we want to give folks tools to make the decisions, to control their habits. So in order to do that, that's that data exchange, that's that two-way communication. So different meter provide, they've looked at ways of doing that through meters. Our smart grid is way better than Concord's smart grid, but with theirs, the way that technology was set up, there was Wi-Fi through the whole town. No one knows it. But there is Wi-Fi for utility use through the whole town, but the bandwidth isn't such that it could transmit the data that's needed. So really what everything was pointing to was we need insight into the home. And what was kind of neat was with this, by having all these ONTs deployed around town, we got access to outage data. So when the ONTs went down, we knew exactly, there's an outage there. So it was like a mini SCADA system. There's all these other little tangential benefits that are opened up.
What sort of initial investment would this require to set up in the town? And is that something that would have to come through, either a loan or some sort of debt exclusion or what?
So you'll see in the report, it was about a $4 million project for Concord. That's a little misleading as well because of the $4 million, about $1 million was smart grid. So I really call it a $3 million fiber project. And then kind of speaking for my community, when we evaluated this on our side.
This is Harvard.
We came out about $5 million. But that's speaking to your point. Concord and my town, Harvard, in terms of geographic area are large, but that's where your costs are. I mean, once the fiber's in, so as you get more dense, we become more efficient in terms of cost. So I think, for conservatively speaking, call it a $4 million, $5 million project is what the end result will be to provide fiber throughout, as well as the networking infrastructure. Right. And we bought a couple of splicing bands, things like that.
And then at your conversion rate to say 30%, what was your payback period estimated?
Yeah. So depends on how you measure that too. So payback period was about 7 years. But what we were looking at, so today, so we're talking, well, this report even holds true end of 2017, early 2018. So within a few years, the major expense for broadband is the build out.
Right.
So
It's the capital.
the capital expense. So as of from 2015 to call it early 18, call it 3 years for argument's sake. In that time period, if you stopped all expansion, Concord fiber broadband is cash flow positive. But it's the build out that is keeping the
How long did it take to get to a cash flow positive? Let's exclude, I'm going towards the question of, did you ever look out, let's say 20 years and do a net present value analysis? Yes. When did the positive swings start?
that's where it gets exciting. And so that's
I think
more,
that stuff too.
yeah. So that's where it starts, right around the 7 to 10 year mark. Again, it's hard to model the variables with uptake and things like that, but the 7 to 10 year mark is where you, with all the build outs, you still have retained surplus. And so, and you go out more and more to the 20 year mark, and that's where
You should have a lot.
you have a lot of surplus. And so that's where I should mention, doesn't apply here, but just for FYI. A big part of this too, and we're going to engage in a Belmont Light strategic plan, but about 2 years ago, we engaged in the Concord Light strategic plan. And the big driver for that was back to the land area, because there was so much distributed generation, you could watch sales was plummeting, just plummeting. And so we're looking at different mechanisms to bring revenue to the utility. And one of those is broadband. And so when you do the NPV after 20 years, you see how profitable, you can't say the P word, but you know, how much surplus there is. And that is helps stabilize the electric utility for other initiatives. And so what you do with that is obviously subject to local policy.
So in the case where you're doing this voltage upgrade at the potentially at the same time, does that mean that the $3 million or $5 million that you might spend is actually in a Belmont ends up being sort of incrementally less because you're doing the fiber at the same time as you would be doing
pulling the wire, pulling the fiber, you're not going out again.
so the number to look at really would be if the voltage upgrade is already a kind of a done deal, right? Then it's really the incremental cost. Of
When is that voltage upgrade scheduled?
It's
Or
done
when's
the
it
10-year plan.
Yeah.
And so we're in it as we speak, just at early stages.
Okay.
What does it mean by voltage upgrade?
Sure. So
We're not gonna change what comes out of the wall.
No, everything in the street.
How do you feel with the voltage?
Yes. Yes.
We just charge them?
Yeah. So,
You really don't want to stick that screwdriver.
How's this won't change, but basically the poles, for the most part, the poles and wires you see are 4,000 volts right now. We're upgrading that to 13,800.
Wow. So going into the pole of 13,800 and transforming with the change to get to 240. We got it.
Well, why are you doing that? Why are you tripling?
Because on the electric side, the higher the voltage you get, the lower your losses. And so that's 1, 2, 4 kVs and older infrastructure, which needs to be upgraded anyway. And 3, we just built this shiny new substation at Blair Pond. And so that one, basically that opens the door to being able to retire these old 4 kV substations. One over here,
Yeah,
you know, the big one.
former
You know, those ones can go away, and it's just a more efficient mechanism to manage the grid.
Now, if you broach this idea with the selectmen who happen to be your board of directors, okay, about the idea of essentially piggybacking the broadband internet cable distribution throughout town, along with the upgrade in the electrical capacity. Haven't done that quite yet. All right. So we're the test case.
Well, and
That's all right.
That's the big part. It's you know, that's how I look at it, as the folks, you know, folks that are involved in the community in these fields, and then, you know, that was a big part too, along with these initiatives in terms of on the electric side, on the broadband side. The big part for me was, you know, talking to committees and groups like this and folks who meet at the tree lighting. You know, then they talk to one another. It gets vetted in the neighborhoods and at events. Then they call the office with the hard questions, and that's how these ideas really get vetted properly. And then when you go to a board meeting, you know, most of the hard work is already done. And so,
Yeah, so I'm curious, in Concord, where did the initiative originate? Was it through the electric department? Was it you? Was it someone else? You know, at what state, like, how did it sort of evolve there?
So that's a fun question too. That goes back a while. So the previous to current day's director, he saw Smart Grid coming. He was great. He is involved. He's a great guy, and because of Concord, everything dovetails together. Back in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, the town voted to underground all infrastructure. So we don't want to see any of these poles and wires or anything. And so from that point on, tensions with Verizon, because they don't want to spend a penny on underground. And so the town and Verizon hated each other. And so there was this kind of effort to say, all right, well, we don't have anything to do, the double poles, everyone hates double poles. Setting poles in a storm is brutal. And so really it was that mechanism again to pull back from these big conglomerates that don't have any tie to the community, say we can do it better. And so part of that process was, okay, how do we get rid of them? Well, we could buy the poles, we own all the poles outright. We can provide our own phone and internet service. We don't need it anymore. And oh, by the way, we'll do smart grid too. And so it really goes back, you know, to.
And so that's what the town did.
So that's what the town did.
Cool.
So it was really originated with the electric utility.
Okay.
And then spread kind of like this.
And-
related. Sorry, we should introduce. We should have all introduced ourselves. But anyway, I'm Jim. But how much pushback did you experience in Concord as you started going down that path? Because I could certainly see the utilities are going to push back hard with every way they can, including, you know, I know the media center, for example, gets funding from both Verizon and Comcast, and I would imagine that it could get nasty.
So that's also in this report. That's why I wanted to give you the whole report. The more I thought about it. So Beacon Hill Institute is basically the lobbyist arm for Comcast and those companies. They literally went to Concord. This is before me. Spreading propaganda. They had handouts. They said, this is going to fail. You know, this is a terrible business model. You know, just trust us. We know what we're doing. And to the citizens of Concord, to their credit, they saw right through it and they're like, yeah, you know, this is garbage. And so, and that's kind of detailed in the report, a little more elegantly than that. And so there was an element where the lobbyist arm came in and said, no, you don't want to do this. They went to town meeting. They spoke at public forums saying, you guys don't want to do this. And so that kind of went away. And then, so fast forward to even as recently as last year, what we would do for new subdivisions, we required as part of build outs for developers to run conduit for fiber. But what happened was, and again, based on that local relationship, we knew all the builders, you know, that were popular. And so that one of the builders was in on the weekend, and there's Comcast, how they knew pipe was in the ground, we don't know, pulling their wires in Concord light pipes, just without permission, just to get in there, calling people up to say, hey, you want to subscribe? You know, and so it's just.
Could they do that legally? So what happened? Did they have
So,
to take it?
Yeah, the developer said, you have no right to be here, take it out, I'm gonna call the police, this is trespassing. And took it all out real quick. You know, and I mean, it sounds crazy to say, but this is all true. And
but you're still intersecting with these people for TV and
As a resident.
And phone.
on bigger part.
As a resident, you're saying, or
No, well, I'm saying the Concord Electric Light is also intersecting with the telecommunications vendors for TV and also for landline telephone, and if I forgot anything else.
So I think, Charlie, this is just for broadband. I don't think.
But that's Charlie's point.
That's my point. My point is
Comcast isn't gone.
Yeah, they're not
Concord.
gone.
People want
Okay.
to-
Yes, okay.
have the politics improved? You know, because in a sense, if I'm a resident, all right, and I'm looking for a service right now, you know, we're with Verizon Fiber.
sure,
Perhaps too much,
Yeah.
but that's the way it is.
Yeah.
However, what you're talking about is very interesting, and especially, you know, maybe there's sort of the idea of getting not only your electricity, but your broadband internet access from the local provider who's has a vested interest in serving you well. It's very attractive, but then again, I don't want to piss off Rick.
sure.
So, how's the politics going on that from the standpoint of the electric light company is something of not only a provider, but a representative for the president position? Well,
Sure, what you found, that leads me to make the point too, the folks that decided not to convert.
Yeah.
Comcast, if you lived in, again, you see published rates online, but if you call and say, I'm a Concord resident, Comcast was either going door to door with mailers or over the phone saying, we're lowering the rates. Because now it's back to that economic policy of competition, which they're not used to. And so there was a benefit to those not only subscribing, but those that said, I still want TV, or I'm not ready to switch. But they called, and Comcast would lower their prices. So there's also a broader.
Well, that's great. I'm sort of more interested in those that did convert and however still have to go to Comcast. Do you also have Verizon out there to get the other?
Yeah, let me comment on that, Charlie, because my guess is, like, you know, you're still a potential future customer, so they're not gonna like do anything weird to like your line. I have both Comcast and Fios in my house, and I just switched, right? And I switch every 2 years.
me too.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you're in a 2-year contract, and then your rates go up, and you're like, you want to lower your rate? It's like, no, I'm going to call your competitor, and I'm going to lower my rate again, right? So, you know, the lines are there. It takes 2 seconds to switch on, and your initial investment in terms of install cost is already absorbed.
Yeah, but that's what I like about this is you're probably going to get the switch rate, close to the switch rate, and you don't have to switch every 2 years.
No,
and,
right.
and furthermore, you know, there are voice options for $10, $6, $8, you know, a month, and then TV. There are plans, you know,
Sling.
30 Sling.
Well, right.
Yeah.
And right, and Chris is making the point around cord cutters too.
Yeah,
So,
right, exactly.
So basically, with the input of both Phil and Glenn, what you're saying is you coexist with them, and there's a sort of an overall benefit to the resident.
Correct, and not to be lost in that is the tensions are already there because of the double pole issue with Verizon, and so anytime, you know, they're not converting poles, so in theory, I'm sure the same is true here. If Verizon comes to the town asking for something, the only way to get them to do anything pole related is to say, okay, well, we'll grant you this new location for phone line if you remove all these double poles. So that's the only way we get any leverage as the town. Same with Comcast. Comcast isn't a pole owner, so they have to maintain a relationship with the pole owners that dictate the attachment fees. And so there's all this politicking around, and so it almost just comes to wash, especially these big utilities, you know, where you find like the local folks who deal with like the government rep or the local installers. They're all very nice people. It's just the larger business model that the whole It's just where this conflict is.
So can you confirm one thing? So in the town of Belmont, Verizon owns a set of poles and the town owns a set of poles. Is that correct?
So it's 50-50 exactly. So that's the other piece to this. So it is, throughout every pole in town is 50-50 ownership. Verizon, Belmont Light. There is a delineation, and this is where problems happen. I always get it backwards. I believe the north side of town, so the difference is who sets the poles out during a storm or construction. That's split again in half. So I believe the southern half of town is, I could be backwards.
Yeah.
Southern half is Verizon, northern half of Belmont is us. And so, but the problem is, then when you need pole work, the southern half of town gets horrible service.
Right.
And they call us and say, well, why is the pole still there? Well, that's technically not our set area, and it just makes us look bad, and it's not our fault. And so we found other towns that are just buying the poles outright, because Verizon landline service is struggling. They have no interest in setting poles anymore, so you're finding good deals for the town to buy the poles. That way we control it for what. I forget the gentleman that emailed it to me outside his house, but he called it pole blunt. And I love that phrase, which it's true. You had all these wires just all everywhere, and it's legally, like, I have no authority over my neighbor's house. We legally can't go in and trespass on other utilities and infrastructure. Right. And so, we're looking at in the short term, we could consider buying the poles like some other communities have. And that just gives us more and more. We're bringing it in. It's back to that theme of we do it better for ourselves because we're the ones that invested in our success in the future.
Tell me, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
You say that in Concord at this point in time, there's probably been a 30% conversion from the major telecommunications provider to the town on internet services. Is that about right?
Not overall. So I guess I should clarify that. It's 30% is the end goal, is the whole town gets deployed, but in each area. So like you'll see in the report, I believe in 2016 it was like 12% of total residents. Okay. So over time, as people convert. So what we'd see.
I guess here's where I was going. And that's given a sufficient amount of time, and I'm not sure what that number would be.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't just about everybody do this? Well, the whole thing is, in many respects, economics, and if they're giving me a better price than Verizon or Comcast, and there isn't any sort of political clash on the other services.
Yep.
Why not? They give me electricity, they give me internet.
Yeah.
The model that you got to get internet from Verizon or Comcast is sort of big.
It's that no-brainer of, wait, I'm paying less to get better service.
Yeah.
Well, there's a classic adoption curve you can look at, right? Which is like, if you have services that are really premium price, you're still going to find people who buy it, right? Because they have this notion of premium quality, right? At the same token, you can have stuff that's going to be free, and still people won't take it, right? And so you've got a curve somewhere in between there that just basically says, depending on the nature of the business and whatnot, you're going to have somewhere in that curve, right? And then when you have three parties, now it gets a little more complicated, right?
And the other big one is sports. Sports. So folks, especially in New England, until you can get more streaming content for Red Sox, Patriots, Messin, you're going to find that the adoption, once sports somehow goes into streaming and they get off of their network contracts, you're going to see conversions spike. But right now, people can't get rid of sports.
So the other thing I wonder about that's changed, that is constantly changing, is wireless.
Yes.
So in your models, and maybe in this report, with wireless, 5G and NG continue to be rolled out, is that another competitive vector, so to speak, that there'll be people who literally cut the cord.
Yep.
And they're not just cutting the cord to go on the internet, but they're cutting the cord to go to fully wireless.
So that is in all of these forums and conferences I go to, that's a big one. And so the current response, and things evolve, but the current response, even as recently as today, and I haven't responded to an email, is the folks in preparation for 5G are not, the wireless deployment is no longer build a big cell antenna somewhere and then blanket everyone in cell service. Because people, EMF, people are more aware of EMF, they don't want it, it's unsightly, especially in this area, there's no real good place. You know, then you get the building mounted units and things like that. But the building mounted units are getting closer to where they're trying to go, which is distributed antennas on wood poles, on street lights. And so as you go distributed, you still need to get fiber to those locations. And so that's where you find they're going to want all the fiber. But we'll say, oh no, we have the fiber. If you want to locate there, we'll lease you the fiber. Right. Oh, and you have a massively profitable 5G service. Well, we want to cut that. So you keep, as they're more successful, we're more successful, because what they want to do, which is, this is an aggravating thing for me and an investor, is once you allow this private company into the right of way, they think they own it. But to me, that's a public good. And so if you're going to profit off of a public good that we're all paying for, we want our cut. And so by putting the infrastructure into the right of way as a public good, and they put a distributed antenna in that's making, you know, millions and millions of dollars, well, we can lease it. So it's kind of that hedge.
So even though Verizon already has FiOS deployed through the town, your position would be, if they start using that with a distributed antenna system to offer wireless
They only have half the
internet
town.
services.
They only have half the town, first of all.
Well,
Okay.
this is where it gets interesting too, and I actually just met with Glenn and Patrice about this, because this is an evolving area. That's where, again, back to the town, it's up to the town to say, what's okay with us? Because say, you know, say you're sitting in your living room looking at a pole with a massive antenna on it. That might be, you know, they don't care, but you might care. And so that's where it's up to the town to enact. Now we're back into the bylaws that say we don't want to see this ugly infrastructure. You know, we don't want to be irradiated beyond a certain safe level of EMF. And so that's where it comes back to regulation from the community side, not just the utility side, to say this is how it can be deployed here. Okay. So it's a kind of a two-pronged approach.
What about 911 and sort of is the battery technology off, you know, so in our
So that's where, so getting in back to the GPON network,
yeah, right.
GPON is really neat, because what we do is you locate that hub, you know, outdoors, say by a cabinet, but you can put it in any server room. And so generally speaking, you locate it in a server room that's backed up with a generator. And with GPON, the lasers are only in the hub, in the server room. And so as long as you can power it up at your house somehow, and the lasers are on in a hardened facility,
Right.
you can have service.
So UPS plus generator here, and you're set.
Okay, final question, because
Sorry, I keep
It's
track.
cool. It's very good.
It's a really interesting presentation.
This is very informative.
Kind of next step. So I guess if this voltage upgrade project, I'm not sure where in the early stages it is, but it would seem to make sense if we were going to do this, that the tooth should be, you know, so what are the next steps as you see it in moving this along here in Belmont? And then I guess the committee could talk about, you know, what our role should be.
Yeah, great question. So that's, I mean, admittedly, that's one I'm still sorting out.
Yeah.
You know, I know there's been talk, there's the IT feasibility study, things like that. So there's more to it, right? So we, this is, I apologize for somewhat of a long-winded answer, but again, in the theme of it all dovetailing together, what we did was we also did shared services with Bedford for IT. Because you have the network expertise already inherently in the fiber tech, the telecom coordinator, the fiber tech. So, so that was one element of that, and so that's part of that discussion. But in terms of next steps, a few folks have emailed me. I don't know if it's because they saw it came from Concord or how it originated, but to say, can we, you know, we heard about this MLP broadband, what should we do? And so what I've told them is, kind of to your point, the first step is to see if there's community interest. And so they talked about creating a survey monkey, or one person was heavily involved with PTO, go to the schools, because a big part of schools, we can serve the schools. And so it's one of those things to build awareness. If folks don't know about it and they hear, it's kind of that, get an idea. So that would be one piece. If there's any ideas or thoughts you have to help gauge the interest of folks to pursue this.
Well, you said at Harvard that you set up a committee actually to investigate it and report out. Is that the approach they use in Concord as well?
So we didn't do different because Harvard, we don't have our own utility.
Oh, okay, right.
So we went, fortunately, successfully passed the new municipal light plan at town meeting. But because we don't have a utility, we had to form something. So that's what we did. In Concord, because the utility, again, that's the other advantage, right? All the customer service is already there. We have customer service folks, we have all the accounting folks. And the billing system's the same, so we use Calyx in Concord, which coincidentally, we have the same billing system here in Belmont, which is a Calyx partner. So everything seamlessly integrates with Calyx. And so all that's there. And so that all of the broadband activities were done through the life. And so we report out through the life.
Okay.
So if I can make one recommendation, which is that other committees in town really want to conduct a survey, they go to the light departments, because you guys have a mailer.
Sure.
That's right.
You can just,
Yeah, we've tried that too.
right, and putting a survey in that mailer is probably the best.
And I bet part of it is having a discussion like this, and if you guys run me out of the room, we wouldn't do a survey, but if I gauge support, then we could certainly.
Aren't you likely to be running the fiber anyhow during your upgrade? Do you want to do it for your smart metering?
Well, I'd like to do it to get to Blair Pond, to interconnect some of the buildings, so in many ways, yes.
Yeah.
And so that's almost the way to then get a pilot area out there. So if there's some hesitation, we can still do a pilot to say, look, it actually works.
Yeah.
You wouldn't run fiber to all of the residential areas, and you wouldn't run high fiber county. If it's just for the town, so, regular fiber network.
No, don't you want to hook right into the smart meters, everyone's home, for the demand response stuff and all the data, like your discussion?
So they're wire.
The wire is
for the data, right? I mean, that's what's the.
It's like a
Right,
bridge.
I think he's thinking of bringing it.
Long term, I mean, that's a benefit. There are other workarounds. But long term, that would be another side benefit is to say, hey, look, we can link the two together. If you want to participate in these DR programs, we'll bring you managed Wi-Fi.
Do we pay for that mesh network? Is there like a monthly fee for the wireless smart meters?
Yes.
There is. Do we know how much? I mean, what we're paying per year for the mesh?
Well, for the mesh network, about half of the gatekeepers are wired and about half are wireless. And for the wireless, it's on a machine-to-machine rate, so I think it's around $100 per month. So.
Okay. Per device.
No, total.
Over the whole town?
And
I think it's for half a dozen of these. We're adding a couple more, so it'll go up some.
So it's a pretty nice.
It's not as expensive as your own cell phone.
And we're looking at that, on the docket for 2019 is an LED lighting conversion. So we're looking to put smart photo lines in each light. So we get actual consumption data, we get individual controls, dimming, things like that. But that's all, again, data backhaul.
Yeah.
I guess one thing that maybe naive about the level of customer service that the light department might be able to provide, but I think to convince people that it's a good idea in addition to the lower cost, Verizon and Comcast are these huge organizations. You may have to wait a few minutes to get through to somebody, Sunday at 5 p.m. Belmont Light Department, you're going to be able to get that level of customer service. I think that's.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing also about this whole buying the poles idea is, of course, those poles can become the foundation for a smart town deployment where you can put any number of sensors up on them, from traffic monitoring to wireless mesh. I mean, you can really go to town, so to speak, with some of the.
Yeah, well, actually, not to interrupt you, but I guess I am.
I think I interrupted you.
No, I was thinking just more from the resident standpoint, if something's wrong
Yes.
and, for whatever reason, they lose their internet service and it's 5 o'clock on Sunday, they want to be able to call somebody up and get it back.
Yep.
And if you're telling me that could very well be put into the business model and is already been put into the business model in Concord, then I think as a resident that would reassure me even more.
They subscribe to a service that's actually based in Syracuse, Integrity. They're a KX partner. And so they do all of the first tier support. And they're the ones that, if it's a hardware issue or some other more complicated issues, they kick it to the on-call telecom folks, which mirrors what we already have for electric. And so in electric, we're a 30 to 45-minute response time for outages. It's already ingrained in the culture. You extend that culture to the telecom side and say, we expect folks that are working on the telecom operations to live within, it's harder, especially in this area of the state, but live within 45 minutes of town. So once the first level of Integrity call center takes it, kicks it up a notch, you have 45 minutes until someone can show up.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been a great presentation.
And you're, by the way, you're a very good spokesman for the club.
Yes.
No, you are. You are.
Welcome to the town.
Oh,
Yeah.
Feel free to call me anytime. Come by the office.
Is it too late for introductions?
Oh.
I feel bad.
No, but we can go around.
By the way.
So I met with, we exchanged emails. One other comment is, Paul, myself, I don't know if anyone else is there, are actually town meeting members as well.
Oh.
Phil, yeah.
Phil.
Oh, and Phil, sorry, of course, yeah, Phil. So the three of us are town meeting members. So, again, if there's, at some point, probably something that you're taking or proposing may go there, so we would have some visibility there.
That's
We
great.
could be spokesman for.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And I'm Paul, we talked before. I mean, my sense is that there's, the broadband piece of it is an important piece, but there's actually a much kind of a bigger story and vision to pitch here. And I think probably the part of refining the pitch is to start to really get clear about here's the 10 or 20 year vision for BMLD and the things we'd like to be able to offer the town and why it's in the town's best interest to do it. Broadband is a part of it, but it's also about all these other things.
And I think at some point you will go to the selectmen and probably get some backing, something put to town or whatever it is. So obviously, if you don't get the kind of reception, then you should probably come back here. Absolutely, we can push something through, but probably until then, I don't know if there's anything maybe.
Is a capital expenditure like this though, you go through the town? Normally on the electric side, it's buried into the rates, right?
So that's another difference. Again, with the schools and all that, so that's the other challenge that has come up is ridiculous. There's no borrowing, there's no more debt appetite. And so that's where Project C comes into play to say, buying real fiber is relatively inexpensive. Crews are already there. And not to get into the weeds of the Belmont Life financials, but there's ample amounts of capital available, captured through the rates. And so with a slower rollout as part of Project C, it's feasible to do this without borrowing.
Again, like if a 10-year profitability, story actually is materialized.
Yeah, right.
So if we're doing reintroduction, Jim, I think the only thing I'll add to what some people mentioned, again, I think it's a very compelling presentation, and some of us who have been on the committee for a long time, who's Charlie, will recall that we actually had a vendor presentation for municipal broadband about 15 years ago, maybe.
No kidding.
Which I can dredge up and send you because I think it is on the internet somewhere. But I found this much more compelling. I think the economics are better now. The acceptance of broadband is much higher than it was then. It was kind of positioned as a public-private partnership, so the private partner obviously wanted to make money. In this case, it's being done as just by the utility. So I think it's much more. I find this. I was kind of skeptical coming into your presentation, having seen that presentation, whatever it was, 15 years ago. But I think a lot of things have changed. The price of equipment has come down. The price of fiber has come down.
National neutrality is no longer a reality.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And anyway, I was very pleased with your presentation, and I will try to find that little because probably somebody will bring it up to you if they haven't already in your travels.
Merchant, MERTO.
Oh, okay.
They made the presentation. They're based out of New Hampshire.
Okay.
And I still have a hard copy, so.
Yeah.
There you go.
Jim can pick it up.
Yeah.
Electronically.
I'm Charlie, by the way. Thank you again. It was an excellent presentation.
And I'm Jonathan Green. I also serve on the Cable Television Advisory.
Okay.
So the sense that this would sort of intersect with that.
Yes.
But not as directly as you might think, because the revenues for media center only come from the video side of Verizon and Comcast. Nothing to do with the revenues they get for telecommunications or that.
And I think that's another tangent. But getting more, be happy to be more involved. That's where the franchise piece comes into play, and the franchise negotiations I think are underutilized in many communities, especially mine. They think they have this monopoly, but also I think there's even an article today.
Yes.
And that same thing, where even as folks say, not even relating to this municipal broadband, as you cut the cord, it's still, I feel like, something that places like BMC, Carlisle TV, you have to look at it in the long term horizon for their finances. So can you dovetail in back to the business model? So as a nonprofit municipal utility, say the return on investment is 8 years because you weave in revenue for local access program. You have that ability to shift.
With the FCC really looking to make it possible for those big corporations to not have to fund that anymore. Yeah, that would be a really.
And as a public good, we have the ability to say 10, 12-year paybacks, okay, because it's more than just earnings, it's a public good.
I think you'll find Belmont fairly organized around such things. We have electric car initiatives, we have solar initiatives, highly, highly adopted, and we're one that we have.
Okay, with that, I need to move us along.
Dave, when I introduced me.
It's very important because he keeps the notes. You don't want to avoid.
Chris, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll talk to you again.
Thanks.
Thanks, Rob.
Okay.
Yes. Before we move on, so I take minutes, not a transcript. Are there any key takeaways that you would want me to put into the minutes for public consumption? Or just leave it as we made the introduction and he gave us a story, which is all I've got right now.
Yeah. Talked about experience in Concord, implementing municipal broadband, and
Walk us through some of the points of this report.
That's right.
Sorry?
You walked us through some of the points.
Yeah, that's basically what I've got.
Okay.
He gave us the report and talked about it.
Yeah. And talked about possibilities of pursuing a similar program here in Belmont.
I don't know, do we want to put anything in the minutes roughly about our reaction to it, or just?
No. Committee asked Mr. Roy questions.
Want to suggest that the presentation was favorably received, or it was very favorably.
I think so.
Can I ask you a stupid question? What did he ask to us?
Yeah, nothing yet.
Because
There wasn't one.
I understand that he really wants to drum up customers, so that he can get fiber to everyone's home to benefit from that. But he doesn't need anyone's approval. You know, I guess the light, remember, the selectmen, I think it's the advisory board,
Right.
the light department.
I'm sure about that.
I
Sure
think
about
so.
The selectmen are the
They might-
municipal light board.
I think they might have to approve any capital raises though, like when they did the substation, I believe that the municipal light doesn't actually have its own capital raising capabilities or something, because I remember that there was some logistics involved for raising the capital to build it. Now, maybe the amount of money is so much less that it isn't necessary.
He seemed to
How did
suggest
they
that
raise
was
the
the case.
capital to that substation? I don't remember. Did they just do
They did
it?
a-
They did a
bond.
They did a bond,
I think.
yeah.
But then there was some complicated transaction that, like, the
Yeah, where the-
wires got
Got sold.
But there was
sold
no
to
debt
somebody.
exclusion to the town. To that bond, right? That they
Huh?
did the bond,
I don't know.
and then they were gonna finance the bond, pay off the bond through rate hikes.
Through rate
Right.
Yeah.
It's not like a normal, building a school or something where we have, you have to borrow money and we have a debt exclusion. Right.
I feel like the board, the light board should probably approve rate hikes and those so probably, if this project plus anticipated rate hikes are things that have to go to the board, I think.
Well,
So
so the municipal light board is the board of selectmen. They're one and the same. We're an advisory board to the board of selectmen on matters related to information technology. If this were to start really moving forward, the selectmen / municipal light board might turn to us and say, what do you
guys
think?
think?
Yeah.
And I hope that would be the case.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if actually our purview extends to matters beyond the town. Extend the matters of the selectmen when it pertains to the light department. I mean, it's a fine point.
Tim
Maybe.
McCarthy pulled us into the Merton group discussions 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think one could say there's precedent if if Chris
Yeah.
Roy wants to involve us in it, I think
Yeah.
there's precedence for us to be involved.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I think the idea actually came, whether or not he generated the idea or he was just conduit, but Robin actually approached us about saying that Chris was interested in it.
And Robin.
Robin's committee, right? So.
And our report to them might be narrowly focused on matters related to the technology part of it. The advantages of having municipally on broadband and maximizing our fiber network and all these potential services that we could offer smart town, the implications for smart towns. So I mean, there are a lot of issues around this that are not strictly DMLD issues or broadband issues, infrastructure, technology infrastructure issues. That would be my guess. I think he's sort of want to evangelize this idea, get a critical mass behind it, and get some of the right people. Sort of, I think there already is interest just within groups within town meeting and within town who would like to see this happen.
Yeah, I just think the net neutrality aspect is something that intersects with our review to a certain extent.
Yeah. Well, and also, Verizon and Comcast are going to zero out, Belmont cable too. It's sort of, then town, it's a really valuable service, and the town might be saying, how do we replace it?
Yeah, I don't know if we want to get into that topic.
We don't. It's not on the agenda.
Okay.
But we can get into it next.
Well, I think we should be careful in we have to read critically the newspaper article, and as part of the cable committee, so we met on this. And I looked at what the FCC is comment on, and it's not quite as draconian as zeroing it, as removing funding for VMC, but it's a matter of how they account for it, right? So, I mean, we have a dire impact.
Yeah.
But
it would basically allow them to assign a value to the channels that they give to us for free,
right?
And basically say, well, we need to, the value of our contribution to you is X amount, but we're giving you an in-kind gift of that amount, which is the channels, and therefore we need to give you nothing for the studio and the staff.
Yeah.
So that,
But then, just take that one step further, the media center could take the position, well, we don't want your channel. We want the 5% in cash, not in in-kind services. And, we will do distribution via municipal broadband.
yeah, right.
So that there are other ways to skin the cat.
Which brings it right back to home.
So if anybody's interested, the old report is available. It was from 2003, so 15 years.
Good estimate.
It's pretty accurate.
Very good.
Just Google Belmont.
HTML
MA.
1.0.
If you Google Belmont MA Municipal Broadband file type PDF, it will be the first hit.
No animated GIFs on that.
Yeah, so that must have been in Simpsons minutes then.
Simpson Garfield.
It's actually off of, it's not in anybody's minutes, it's off of a website called tellmark.com.
Wow.
So I think they were.
Let's just move it along to the IT capital request, our review. So,
Sorry, well, I'm just thinking about the date, 2003. I think
Yeah, because that's around the time I started.
that I've felt.
yeah, it's been up there for a while. Okay, so I did. I included a draft of the review or report I wrote up to Patrice Garvin. Patrice has seen this draft, as have all of you. I shared the Google Doc with her because I know that she was on a fairly tight timeline to meet with Capital Budget Committee and would benefit from this. So, but we do need to formally, if we're going to pass it on to her, kind of adopt it as a report. And I can close the loop and formally present it to her. And I went back and forth with the town clerk about whether we couldn't all just do this via Google Docs, but we can't. So I don't know if I know you guys have seen this both online and in print, but if there are any, as with the minutes, any suggestions, tweaks, wording changes, things you want to add to it, spelling corrections, any of that stuff. Now is the time to talk about it. I tried to sort of faithfully reproduce our discussion on this. I also did send her a link to the YouTube video of our conversation and said, if you have any questions, you can actually see the entire conversation in real time here. And so between the document and the video, I'm guessing she got a pretty good idea of what we have to say.
Yeah, I wonder if there was one thing that we kind of came to the conclusion that it was interesting how it was being accounted for now that we
There was the storage, I think that was, why is it on the list now when it's been for 5 years? And the answer was because he has to have a 5-year plan or something like that.
Yeah, there was that part of it. Plus there was the, which pools of money are these allocated to, and there was kind of our recommendation. I don't know. I mean, probably doesn't belong here, but I'm just remembering it.
So a couple of things that I remember we had. I mean, there was obviously a good amount of discussion about the hiring of a consultant to, assess, the town's IT structure basically, and I think that was what we spent most of our time talking about. And I think that the consensus was, $15,000, and if the town manager wants to do it, then doesn't seem like a lot of money, and we could see value in it. But that IT consolidation had been looked at through the prism of cost savings, and it was pretty clear that there aren't tremendous cost savings to be had there. So that's not the only reason to look at IT consolidation.
I think you worded it well.
Yeah.
We don't know. We were skeptical about whether there was going to be cost savings to be had. We've had previous discussions in the past in which we thought there was specialized, skills. I don't know that that's necessarily called
spelled out as nicely as I might like.
Yeah.
But in the past, we've discussed this, heard reports from town IT managers. There is specialized skills that each of them has, and it doesn't seem, we're skeptical as to whether it would be wise to streamline that.
Yeah, right.
So,
Do you want to add a note in there about specialized skills and maybe just beef that part of our notes up a little bit?
yeah, maybe just something along the lines of, I would think that would be appropriate to say,
Okay.
Something along the lines of the attackers are additionally skeptical that consolidating areas in which specialized skills are streamlining, in which specialized skills are required, would be appropriate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Barf that out in a paragraph or whatever on an email, and I will.
Okay.
I will weave it in.
I hate to not have us approve these.
Okay.
I'd love that.
You're right. We should probably just do it. We should probably just do it right now. Right. You gotta look at this draft. Studied and issued reports on IT, those in analysis that are important rates of hand. ITech members are skeptical. There are big savings we had in consolidating towns, various IT functions under a single department and chain of command. Members know the close cooperation between towns' various IT functions and wondered whether consolidation might make it hard for the town to move forward.
In there.
The initiatives on different
Maybe that's
simultaneously.
enough. I guess.
And we could add something in addition. And I'm doing this. If you want to get on the Google share, I'm doing this in real time. But in addition, both town and school, both town and school IT require distinct skill sets that might not
amend them.
That's the word I'm looking for. Might not be amenable.
Might not.
To streamline. In a single position. Okay. Still, committee recognizes. Okay.
Yeah.
So I just added a sentence that read: in addition, both town and school IT require distinct skill sets that might not be amenable to streamlining in a single department. I guess we should say.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other comment I had on that section was I thought we had discussed that bringing in a single person to actually oversee all of the IT in the town, who might be end up being the boss of everybody, would just increase rather than decrease costs.
Exactly.
So, because right now we have 3 independent managers who all operate effectively but collaborate well with each other.
Right.
It doesn't help to add another person on top unless they fire 2 people underneath them
which is
to net out the savings, which is not uncommon behavior in organizations.
Absolutely. And I think we sort of planted the need for that by instituting the service level agreement. I mean, that is kind of the manager, the intermediary between all these guys, right?
Yeah. So could we add something in the nature of, ITAC generally believes that trying to consolidate under a single manager, if that manager would be a new hire to the organization, would potentially increase rather than decrease in costs?
Yes. So I'm going to add a sentence. ITAC members are skeptical that there are big savings we have in consolidating the town's various IT functions under a single department and chain of command.
Especially if it involves a new hire.
Consolidating independent but well functioning departments under a single
Possibly new leader.
Possibly under new leadership could
Increase
could lead could decrease in efficiency, the efficiency of each of those functions while increasing cost.
I mean, that's what this study's all about, but it's,
It's the current close collaboration between towns and residents, wonder whether consolidation may be hard to move forward. Okay. But go ahead and study it. There are just as many arguments are made in favor. The other big things I think were just the I was careful to note, as Dave did, that that the town might really start looking at its fiber network as something that requires an ongoing maintenance fund along the lines of the sewers, and not just we forget about it and then some huge cost blows up and wipes out our financial planning for the year or capital budget for the year, and that so I did put that in. I thought that was an important thing he noted. And on the $50,000, I basically said, as we did, this is one of those, is this a use it or lose it fund or not? And, it's a very tricky thing. You get $50,000 a year and lo and behold, you find a way to spend it. Is that actually less than you need, more than you need? It's unclear, but maybe worth looking at and figuring out,
Under IT, our tech notes, second paragraph, there's a typo.
Where? On page.
Under request 4.
Okay, yeah.
I tech notes, second paragraph, second sentence. The kinds of equipment versus the kids of equipment.
Kids of equipment.
Okay,
yeah.
Is it the one that we-
Kinds of
I'm
equipment.
sure
There's
it's
also
probably
one
something
that-
stolen from my minutes that have the same typo.
Where was that?
It wouldn't surprise me.
Where's
I
the-
noticed
where's the one you
typos.
pointed out? I noticed
No, this is
another one.
different. This is different. This is
Oh, okay, so in the first paragraph under ITAC notes, you said what the town the town has tapped this fund for. Oh, okay, never mind.
varies from year to year.
Parsed it wrong.
Do we want to,
There's Penn clauses, really, it's right on
I guess, you guys, under the request 3, Belmont is currently contracting with LCN ? Do we want it?
Oh yeah, I
verify?
think that was in my notes, and I just wasn't sure if that was correct.
Yeah, should we verify that and then get it right and then make sure it's the right one?
Yes. Sure.
Another typo and
We can approve this contingent on a small change.
Yeah,
like this.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree.
in the first paragraph of justification, it says E was no design, should be there.
Where was this?
Request 3,
Yeah.
justification, the original.
Yeah. The original fiber network was installed.
Hold on. And then it says,
3 electrical substations. Town school buildings were connected to the
Second,
fiber installed. There was no design. Yeah. I should spell out 3. No design at the time, just building the building. Over the years, modifications have been made to accommodate new needs. Fiber network is now critical. I mean, some of this I was grabbing from Dave's, in those. So I'm not responsible for any of those typos. I mean, I did say to her, we got a crazy looking spreadsheet, printed out from I don't even know what that system
It was an inventory system.
Yeah. That, basically was impossible for us to parse. So, it's not like we went over all of those expenditures with a fine tooth comb. So,
Yeah.
so I will check on the LCN thing. Nobody knows that off the top of their head. Who was that? That was Dave
Dave
who was
Perra.
talking. Yeah. Okay. And then the storage network upgrade, I basically was sort of this is 5 years out, so It's sort of a placeholder, but it could be more, could be less. We really don't know.
So I'll move to approve these with the LCN clarification.
Okay. I'm gonna make a note.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks for taking the time to, hear that whole presentation and do that discussion. I think it was fruitful, and, hopefully Patrice found it useful, and will pull us into the loop on other things like that. Okay. Moving down the list quickly, let's see,
This is subcommittee report.
21st Century Subcommittee report. Okay, so we met actually just before the full committee meeting. We have completed our survey of town committees, and we got 47 responses on that. Which is by and large the bulk of the functioning committees. There are a few on our list that are defunct.
That 47 committee responses or 47 people?
47 people. 47 people representing probably close to that number of committees.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, because if you got only one person per committee, who's the chair or the vice chair. We have circulated our survey for the public to town meeting, and we got about 81 responses to that. We're going to give that about another week or 10 days and do a little promotion on Facebook and Nextdoor and my blog and Belmontonian and see if we can maybe get another,
So went to town meeting?
It did go to town meeting from Ellen Cushman.
Maybe I missed it.
I think I wasn't there either.
Well, dig through your notes from Ellen, and there's
The only thing I remember from Ellen was one that came through today about the warrant committee.
yeah. Now I will. I can ask her to resend it. Actually, it might be an idea.
I do remember seeing something to town meeting members.
Yeah, from her. I mean, there was a flurry of stuff after the last town meeting, which is when it came through. So
Yeah.
Oh, so this was a while ago.
Yeah.
well,
2 months ago, something.
Okay, well then I may have gotten it and just.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'll see if Ellen will send it a little reminder, and that's easy to do, and then we can promote it. I don't want to just pull a town meeting because that's sort of a self-selecting population, maybe not representative of the public at large. Really interesting responses
But
on
we're also asking town meeting members to poll their
constituents.
At
Yes.
least some of the constituents. That's the
Yeah. I mean, I have a list of town meeting member emails. I should blast it.
I would they go through town.
Poll constituents. That's a good idea. Some very interesting kind of, a cursory look at the results, very interesting. There does seem to be very strong support for, remote access to meetings, actually stronger support for allowing committee members to remotely attend and participate than the public at large, although in most cases we had, good strong majorities of respondents in support of that. In terms of the process, not surprisingly, heavy reliance on email in terms of communicating, scheduling, and that type of thing. Not very heavy use of social media and so on to communicate with the public. We had some interesting discussions about ways that the town might kind of leverage its existing Office 365 deployment, perhaps around scheduling and calendaring to get everybody in these committees on the same darn platform. Because now, if you look, it's just a hodgepodge of email, phone, face-to-face. The selectman's office does it. The so-and-so's office does it. And it's just there's a lot of consistency there. So we're gonna pull those together. We're hoping to have a report ready for the selectmen by end of year that they can maybe chew on right after the holidays. And at that point, I think we obviously present it to the full committee first for a review and approval, pass it on to the selectmen, and then maybe set up a time to meet with them and make some talk about these surveys, and then maybe make some suggestions to them on ways to move forward on this. The meeting owl stuff will be part of that. On that, Jeff Hansel and I met a few weeks ago. he expressed an interest in BMC really taking the lead on that, which I thought was a great idea. And I know I hooked him up with Amy DeDeo on maybe acquiring a meeting hour or two as a pilot, and using this committee perhaps as a pilot program for how BMC could scale to not only do the high level committees they do, selectmen, school committee, but also maybe some of the smaller committees, without breaking the camel's back, so to speak. But Jeff seemed really interested in it. I think they'd be the perfect organization to spearhead this, and already have it set up with the video side and the streaming side and stuff. So that would be great. Anything else I'm forgetting?
No, I'm just looking at the data, and there were 6 people who responded more than once.
Okay.
Probably in response to
Different
a
committees.
A reminder, no,
Or
same
reminder.
committee, but they might have forgotten to respond the first time, so they responded again. So
Okay.
look through the data and sort of
Scrub that.
scrub that the data.
Voted early, voted often.
Yeah. Some people were on multiple committees, so might have answered it multiple times, just in their role. I mean, it's like a small cast of characters who are running all these committees. And then next and final item of business, Glenn, the Technology, Cybersecurity, and Public Health Subcommittee.
Yeah, no major update there. We have a meeting scheduled in 2 weeks' time. The one thing that we're working towards right now is having a sort of summary of what our sort of talk protocols have been and sort of lessons learned in terms of getting the word out and organizing all that. And then we'll have that as a deliverable to this committee, so that it sort of encapsulates some of the things that we have learned and some of the protocols we developed in putting together.
I have a question. Are we going to be able to see that in light of the fact that the person who's drafting it probably won't be there on December 13th?
She said she will make a copy of it available to the committee in time for that, and then we'll discuss it in committee.
I mean, I guess one question would be, is there some recommendations or a part of this report that we're going to hand over to the selectmen out of your committee? And
it's not necessarily something for the selectmen. It's actually more of a reference guide for this group. If in the future we want to do something similar, either within that subcommittee or within another subcommittee that has some sort of a public speaking kind of forum to it. Here are ways that we promoted it, the ways we recruited speakers, things like that. So
we're basically trying to document the template of the model.
Yeah.
Right. Just so that in case this committee dissolves or people go away, whoever does something similar in the future doesn't have to do it from scratch.
This committee's
So that's the initial goal. Then we are starting to brainstorm, or we've been sort of lightly brainstorming on what activities we may want to initiate in 2019.
Talks or just other stuff?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want input from the rest of the committee?
I'll second that.
Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay. Do you have email or something like that?
I think it's also fair to say that one of the things we're discussing is how to lift what we're doing to the level of a full committee as opposed to that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, one thing to talk about at the end of the year, obviously, is, do we want to continue to roll these committees in 2019, or we want to, say,
We raised that question.
Back,
we actually raised that question. There was general sentiment. Charlie, correct me if I'm mistaken, but the 4/5 of us, if you include officer or detective Syracuse, was actually the group worked well together. So, and we were pretty pleased about what we were able to put together over the last 4 months. So we wanted to, no one had an objection to continue to meet as long as it sounds worthwhile things to meet about.
right.
So,
Okay.
Do we have the right 2 committees at the moment? We always talk about different sort of topics, and so.
I'd love to rename ours so it has a shorter name.
Yeah.
It's your purview as chair to do that.
Just write public health.
Yeah, I saw.
Subcommittee, and then I go and look up what the right name is and replace it.
The TCPH.
Yeah, maybe we'll put that on the agenda as a self-made branding exercise.
Yeah, well, you might, and maybe it's worth bringing up, when you have everybody here from your subcommittees, in this meeting, what the charter,
Right,
should
could be
what other,
implemented.
committee
other areas to.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to, I found it a fascinating presentation. I think it may have been just early this week at the Harbor Club of Boston. It was put on by David Sanger. And he was talking about his book, The Perfect Weapon. And basically, he was talking about the use of cyber-based things for nefarious purposes. It was probably not, it didn't have an awful lot to tell us about things at the local level, but then again, it might. But it certainly had a lot to say about things at the national level.
This is Dave Sanger, you said?
Sanger, I believe. Yeah, he's a journalist with the New York Times and also a lecturer on topics like this at the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard.
Okay. Very good. I'll take a look.
So we're just tossing out ideas.
Yeah,
So
please.
I at a on the newsletter of one of our other committee members, I happened to notice a presentation that I went to that was given by a woman who's the head of an organization that is interested in improving election security.
Okay.
And it was kind of fascinating. It was hosted by the Wellesley League of Women Voters.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know if she's California based, I think. So I don't know if
Okay.
she's in this area at all, but I could send you the info. It was fascinating because it talked about how sort of voting machine technology, but also the processes around voting and how they can be strengthened. So it's probably not a general interest, but there were a lot of people from the Wellesley League of Women Voters who were there and engaged.
Well, it's certainly a hot topic right now, right? And
Yeah.
going into the 2020 election, it'll be continuing to be something that is top of mind. So
I can send you a link for
sure.
forward your pulse.
Not as relevant in Massachusetts.
Those are the meetings.
Florida, but
And Georgia's apparently particularly bad.
Georgia's terrible,
Listening to this one, it's all the
those
Yeah, Massachusetts is pretty good.
shocker.
Okay, with that, do we want to try and meet in December, or do we want to say, let's meet after the New Year?
New Year.
I mean, I think our subcommittees can meet next month, but we don't all need to meet. Okay, so January it is.
You want to look at dates now, or?
Yeah, while we're all here. One last doodle invite for people to.
It's always tough.
Yeah, it's tough now. I have no idea what my travel's going to be looking like in January. Because
I'm already booked for a few days, so I know I'm not going to be available the first week of January.
17th? I mean, mine looks pretty open. I mean, I can certainly do the second week or third week. Either of those are fine.
and I could pencil something in, but there's always a risk that I won't end up on a trip.
So you want to say the 17th or the 10th and just, pencil it in, and then if we need to move it, we can move it?
Let's just say the 10th, just in case it has to be postponed until later in the month.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Thursday's our preferred day.
No,
No.
we could do another day that week.
I personally prefer Tuesday or Wednesday, but
You got work for other folks as well?
Sure.
I'm not in town April.
Okay.
10th, I'm not even sure.
Yeah.
No, I think I'm in town, but I get in at like a 1 a.m. flight. Well, it's like a night, whatever. So I'm coming in from Florida Wednesday night, I guess. So I think that's what I'm interpreting.
So do you want to go to ITAC that night?
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, it's
Okay, so
ITAC.
Thursday, January 10th?
Yep.
And then why don't we just confirm that the week before?
Yeah.
And we want to have a potential subcommittee before.
Yep. ITAC January meeting.
Is
7:30 again.
7:30, yep.
Is Glenn gonna take the scheduling of the meetings over,
God, I hope so.
Meaning, I mean, I'm happy to help coordinate with the town and just make sure that we get agendas in time.
Yeah.
Is that what you're implying?
That's what he's hinting.
I'm hinting.
Okay.
I'm hinting.
I'm happy to make sure that the meeting time is agreed upon and that we are both forward to. How about that?
I'm sorry, there's something I was just really shitty at.
Hmm?
I know you're good at that, so.
Yes.
I don't know if good at it is the right word, but more like well motivated to make sure that we actually
Don't run afoul of our very
Town clerk.
attentive town clerk.
Exactly. I've made that
Crosses her T's and dots her I's. Yeah. Okay. With that, somebody want to move to adjourn, and we can.
So moved.
All in favor?
Third.
So the 10th, yes, 10th at 7:30. Thanks, everybody. Good job.
Yeah.
I'll send a link to the
When
video.
our next